A British daily says Trump tariffs are pushing investors to purchase entertainment stocks, believing them to be safe from a brewing global trade war. With more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Thursday's edition of Press Perspective. It's February 27th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. Today we touch upon the impact of Trump tariffs on entertainment stocks here in South Korea. Now for more on this and other K-pop related headlines, I have Chloe Borgnon with French broadcaster France 24 here in the studio. Chloe, it's great to see you again.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I also have Bernie Cho, the head of DFSB Kollective, a Korean music distribution company, with the pundit's take on today's topic. Bernie, it's a pleasure to have you back.
Oh, it's good to be back. Thank you for having me.
Right, Chloe, we'll start with you. Let's begin with details of the article published by The Guardian with regard to Korean entertainment stocks.
Yeah, so it was published by Justin McCurry, who's a correspondent for The Guardian. It published this month. And his main point on this article is saying that with the tariff war that's been started by Donald Trump since he arrived back in the presidency in the United States, the investors are trying to fly to safer assets. And what Justin McCurry is saying in his article is that K-pop is not considered as one of the safest places to invest, and he described it as a safe haven. So it's true that K-pop is already one of South Korea cultural, most successful cultural exports product. They have been gaining for South Korea almost $900 million in 2023. It's very big exportation. It's also quite a nice step up since the year before. So it was the raise was 1/3 more than the 2022, and that's according to Korea Culture and Tourism Institute. So why did Justin say that in his article that the investors are interested in K-pop is that he had a look at the shares of South Korea and the biggest entertainment group for the K-pop, so the Big Four. And what he was saying is that recently, so he took the numbers in mid-February, but he said that this is the highest levels for their shares that we have seen in 1 year. So, and for some of them, it's even more than that. So that's what he was saying is that JYP Entertainment had a raise of plus 6.09%, IBE at plus 3.15%. Those are record price shares. And same for SM Entertainment and YG Entertainment. He said they came close to their highest yearly highs. So the causes for that, what he's saying is mostly because of Trump global tariff wars, especially recently on steel, for example. And also what he's saying is that we are seeing, with the BTS comeback, with BLACKPINK World Tour era, we are seeing a new era of, good time maybe for K-pop coming up. And that's the investors are seeing that too.
Right, now staying with what Chloe just said, Bernie, the article by The Guardian, it does say that the aggressive purchasing, that's a direct quote from the article, of entertainment stocks was also driven by, like she said, expectations that K-pop would enter a new boom. What more can you add?
Well, I think, I read the article and I've been asked to talk a lot about it, and I do agree, but I don't think the argument is as simple as it seems. I think in many ways, I think the upswing in all the K-pop stocks is not so much just a direct result of Donald Trump throwing down. I think it has to do more with sort of a convergence, a confluence of coincidence. A lot of very positive factors all look together. People start connecting the dots. So for instance, number one, the FX rate. The fact that K-pop is one of the biggest exports out of Korea, and any artist, any company making money overseas is going to see an automatic spike in revenues just on the FX rates alone. The second thing is that there are rumors that the China music market is going to open, and China is a big, huge market for K-pop. And so the ability to re-enter very soon, a lot of positive vibes on that front. And then the other thing is just the numbers, the statistics. A lot of the year-end reports came out from whether it be Billboard magazine or the IFPI. And K-pop, forget being Korean, it's just pop music now. 17 out of the best-selling albums in the world last year were K-pop. 7 out of the top 10 best-selling compact discs in the US Billboard charts were K-pop. CDs no longer stand for compact discs. It stands for chart dominance. And then the fact that there's now data showing that K-pop fans spend more money than any other fan of any other US music genre, whether it's at concerts buying merchandise to physical music goods. So when you add all of that up, that's why you're starting to see the stocks not just spike, but just continue to go higher. And taking into consideration Donald Trump going after anything politically, sensitive to flex, pop culture is something he kind of overlooked. Because right now, Korean pop culture exports is the second biggest consumer goods exports behind automobiles. So while he was putting out this game plan, a little bit of a miss, but for now, we'll take it.
Right, and against this backdrop, Bernie, what can you tell us about this year's plans by Korea's 4 major entertainment agencies, including, of course, HYBE, YG, SM, and JYP?
Well, 30 minutes isn't going to be enough time, but I think, as much as we call them the Big Four, I like to call them the Fab Four, a little shout out and throw out to the Beatles. But what's really interesting about these 4 leading Korean music companies is their annual revenues are bigger than entire music economies in Asia and Europe. And so when we talk about how big they are, we can't just look at them as companies. They're bigger than music economies, music markets. And when we look at how they're making their money, yes, they have a steady stream of boy bands and girl bands and trainees and new solo acts. But what I think is more interesting is what we're seeing as of late, and we're starting to see the fruition of these efforts now, is not just the export of the K-pop music, but the K-pop music business model. And so, for instance, right now, HYBE, JYP, and SM all have non-Korean K-pop trained boy bands and girl bands and artists starting to come out into the market, starting to be debuted, some of them now going for a round 2. And so it'll be interesting to see if the K-pop business model translates into success. And so far, the signs are still early. It's very much a work in progress. But for me, this is what I'm looking forward to in 2025, is to see if K-pop crosses over, not just from an audio or visual standpoint, but from a logistics, a training, and a financial standpoint as well.
Right, and K-pop, Chloe, it was the most popular South Korea-related content in Asia, in Asia, Europe, and Latin America, according to findings by the Culture Ministry for last year, while K-food was popular in North America and Africa. How do you explain the popularity of K-pop in Europe, in France, where you're from?
Yeah, so as you said, the Ministry of Culture actually did a study on all the contents that were related to K-pop, K-food, any Hallyu content. So either in media or also on social medias as well. And what they saw is that Europe is the second the second area that's making the most content. So it was nearly 25% of all the global content made about Hallyu came from Europe. So why is it so popular in France, but in Europe in general? It's hard to say because there is no specific studies yet on why is K-pop so popular to the youngest. So here it's my own guesses that I'm taking is possible causes would be, first of all, the demographic. So Europe, you still have a lot of young people, and we know that the audience for K-pop is quite young. So if you look at Spotify listeners of K-pop, so that's mostly for European there, they are saying that the listeners are mostly aged between 18 and 24 years old. There is also another thing that is, according to the fans, European fans, what they do like is that K-pop artists are trying to make it, they are trying to be more available for the fans, and they do like this relationship that they don't get with more traditional European artists. The other thing also is obviously that K-pop is quite a fresh air. Either in the aesthetic, in the clip, in the music, everything. And I feel like European young are growing up with a lot of different music anyway. Like in France, I'd grow up with obviously French bands, but also punk rock from Britain or techno music from Germany. So, we are used to listening from music from all over the places. So getting K-pop in was not weird for younger generation and younger listeners because they're used to have other music that are not in their language or in their cultural sphere. So that's what I would say. And then, as Bernie just said, like the K-pop labels are also playing with it, trying to get foreign groups or at least foreign artists into K-pop bands to appeal a bit more to the fans as well.
Right. Bernie, with regard to K-pop in the US, while this year's Grammy Awards earlier this month included some of the industry's most talented artists, K-pop itself, it was visibly absent. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the reasons behind this. What are your thoughts?
I listen to a lot of industry insiders, and obviously I read a lot of sort of what the fans have to say. And I think time and time again, every year, the same facts need to be just spelled out. Number one, the Grammy Awards, it's a US music award show. So it's very focused on generally US/Western/English speaking language songs, artist albums. Two, it's not a popularity contest for fans. If it were, the Grammys would be overrun by K-pop. 11 out of 10 would be K-pop winners. So, but the truth is that it's industry insiders who vote, and they're voting amongst their peers and their colleagues. And again, I think it's if people want some context, it's no different than, say, the Academy Awards, the Oscars in the film industry. And people, for whatever reason, understand and more importantly, respect that that's the system, that's how it's built, and that's the way it's supposed to be. I think that, yes, this might have been for some fans an off year because they didn't see any nominees or any performances, but I'm really excited for some of the songs that have been coming out this year that I think are prime for Grammy nominations for next year. And so I think next year is going to be a good year, whether it's Rosé with Apata, or G-Dragon with Power, or Lisa with a bunch of singles she's been featuring with a bunch of Grammy-nominated and Grammy Award-winning artists, and Jenny as well. So there's a whole laundry list of, I think, really positive signs for next year. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, and again, I might get myself in trouble for saying this, is that when some of these fans push too hard and try too hard to kind of manifest this vision that their favorite act should be entitled to win a Grammy, that heated, over-the-top enthusiasm to basically harass, threaten certain people in the industry, be it reporters or producers or DJs or whoever, it backfires. And there's a term for it, and I heard this from some media friends of mine in the US. People are so scared to talk negatively about certain K-pop acts. I think I'm going to give it away, but they call it PTSD because it's so stressful to deal with these angry mobs of K-pop fans. And as much as, you know, they have a passion to see their favorite artist get nominated and win, sometimes if you go too hard and you try too hard, it might actually have the exact opposite effect. And so I think that's something that needs to be considered, that there's a system, respect it to whatever it's worth. And again, I think history proves a lot of lessons. Hip-hop took decades before it got mainstream recognition and started winning the mainstream awards. And K-pop fans, you know, you gotta love them, but what they're asking for is what hip-hop did in decades, they want it to happen in a matter of a few years. So patience, but I don't wanna wait 20 years. I think it's gonna happen sooner, but the point is, it's gonna take a while to get there, and we're moving in the right direction.
Same with K-pop in the US, Bernie. I heard one K-pop group canceled its tour in North America owing to visa issues.
Yeah,
Tell us a bit more about that.
This is unfortunate. You know, Card, one of, I think, you know, the best co-ed K-pop bands out there. You know, you don't see them and hear them much in Korea for good reason, because they're always touring. They're always touring, whether it be in Europe, Latin America, North America. So they're tested talents that know how to tour. And yet they ran into problems getting a working visa to tour the US. And they've done this tour many times. And look, I run a business and I've dealt with this firsthand personally. It's very frustrating getting a visa because even though you do all the paperwork and you pay all the fees, sometimes they go through, sometimes it goes off the rails and you know, sideways for reasons that are not explained, and you can't even ask. And you know, credit where credit's due, the promoter, realizing that this, you know, the situation is going to get dire, had to make a very difficult choice, which is to cancel the tour. But that was the right thing to do. But it should not even have happened, because, and again, you know, I've noticed for me and for the artists that I work with, getting visas getting so hard and harder and harder, more expensive, more unpredictable. It almost feels like it's harder to get a U.S. touring visa, working visa, than to apply to a college or university or whatnot. And I've done so many of these applications, but it's hard to predict what's going to hit, what's going to miss. But unfortunately, we're hearing more and more stories of visas just not being processed in a timely manner, and these things happen. And you know, a lot of it, some of it's public, a lot of it's not public, but it's a very real problem in the industry.
Right, very sad for the fans as well then. Despite the hurdles then faced by some K-pop groups trying to tour the US, as Bernie mentioned earlier, Chloe, the K-entertainment industry may enjoy greater inroads into neighboring China. Do tell us more about that.
Yeah, so as we were saying before, the boom could also happen thanks to China, who is reportedly preparing to lift the Hallyu ban. So this ban is actually restriction on South Korean cultural products, so that would be K-drama, K-pop, but also movies or video game to be imported in China. So this is a ban that was effective since 2017. It was actually retaliation in the context of very strong hardship, geopolitical tensions between the two countries. The thing is, this ban was never officially acknowledged, but it is said that it was getting, it's hard, and there were a lot of obstacles to get any cultural product from South Korea to be imported and to get the approbation to get imported into China. So this end of the ban could come as early as May 2025, so this year. This is actually one of the diplomats from China who say that the first steps are actually being taken to expand the cultural exchange between the two countries, and that there is the aim to restore, like fully resume cultural cooperation by May this year. So it's interesting to see that China, before the ban, was responsible for about a fifth of South Korean entertainment companies' revenue, and so there's an institute who also make estimation that it caused damage up to $15.3 billion for the Korean industries in 2026-27 when the ban was established. So if China and the Chinese market is opening again to K-pop and Hallyu related content, that would be like a nice gush of air for the industry.
Right, for sure. Chloe, do you suppose renewed cultural exchanges between Seoul and Beijing may lead to perhaps productive interactions between the two on other fronts?
Yeah, I think it's possible. So first of all, we have seen earlier last year when the diplomatic ties started again, like getting stronger with China, between South Korea and China, there was a lot of discussion about cultural exchanges, but also educational exchanges, and then more like industrial. So we already know that the two countries want to be able to maim the relationship and get the ties better. And that was even before Donald Trump came back. And again, we're circling back to the global tariff war. But it's true that with the US being not such a reliable ally, then South Korea might want to turn to China for multiple fields, so that could be cultural, but that could also be economical fields. And so I do feel that it could happen. But then we have to be careful, because in the current situation, there is also a little problem, that is the anti-China sentiment that has been raised by some of the protesters outside here who've been protesting against the impeachment for the President Yoon Suk-yeol. And the ambassador of China here in South Korea has been warning against it, saying that it was obviously a tiny minority, but that the disruptive influence could have, and I'm quoting him, a significant impact on the development of the relationship between the two countries. So that would be, for me, the main drawback that could happen there.
Right then. Meanwhile, Bernie, back on the K-pop front, you mentioned earlier about the remarkable advances by K-pop last year in terms of record sales and rankings. If I were to ask you to highlight the top 3 K-pop moments of the year 2024, what would you choose to highlight?
You know, I think the word highlight is maybe a little bit dicey. I would say the 3 biggest sort of items or stories. You can't ignore the Hyde versus Adore Battle Royale. That may have been the biggest K-drama that was not on Netflix. And it's got bits, unfortunately, of sort of legal UFC aspects to it. This blew up last year right around this time, and it's still ongoing, and the dust still hasn't cleared. And so, you know, no taking sides today, but that's definitely a big story that has a lot of ramifications and implications. The second sort of big story, actually this one I would chalk up as a highlight, is in addition to obviously the success of the Fab Four, HYBE, JYP, SM, and YG, there were some really interesting surprises in terms of bands from other music management companies that have managed to find, you know, tremendous success overseas. Two that come to mind, or I'll slip in three, was ATEEZ. They've done incredibly well. They're playing big festivals. They've been charting. They've been hitting #1. The girl band IVE and G-Idol. And these are bands that I don't think we talk enough about, but they had a tremendous 2024. And then the last thing, because you wanted me to talk about threes, is the fact that it's become more and more the rule rather than the exception that solo ventures or subunit ventures of existing, not broken up, but existing boy bands and girl bands have really sort of shown that you know, artists can maintain their band image but yet find their own image vis-a-vis through having these solo careers side by side with their band careers, and so that the synergies are becoming more apparent. And I'm going to plagiarize myself because I've said this before, I'll say it again, but a lot of these boy bands and girl bands now, when they go off on solo separate ventures and then come back together again, they used to be boy bands and girl bands, but after their solo, you know, endeavors, they're coming back as supergroups. And I think it's only building not only the brand value of the band, the companies, but for the artists themselves.
I see, and hopefully we'll see more of that this year as well. As always, Bernie, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. And Chloe, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, on that note, we end this edition of Press Perspective. See you same time tomorrow. Thank you for watching.